Hey Alexis,
Hey, Allie.
did you know that clownfish can change their biological gender?
What? That is
Yeah.
so cool.
In their schools, like the whichever like of the largest fish
Uh-huh.
becomes a dominant female and the
Uh-huh.
second largest becomes a dominant male. And then any other like fish in the school will be like gender neutral until they need to be
Oh,
like
that is
used.
so cool. I love that.
Yep, so, gender doesn't matter.
Yeah, really. Even the animals know they're like, okay, we're just gonna do what we want.
Exactly whatever we can do to survive.
Real.
Well, hey everyone, we're Green Thread. I'm Allie.
And I'm Alexis.
And we're here to keep you pulling on your green thread. Today, we're going to be talking about a few topics that have to do with how nature doesn't look at the same social norms that we do. In fact, the whole idea of like unnatural isn't even a thing
Yeah.
in nature, it's all natural.
It's all natural.
One of the oppressions that I feel like does come up a lot though, especially with people in social hierarchies, is like feminism, or a patriarchy versus a matriarchy, and that actually is a term for that, which is ecofeminism. It was coined first in like 1974 by a French feminist called Françoise Debon. She was focused on the relationship between feminism and nature, and how there's a way that people have exploited and tried to control both nature and women, and kind of like diminishing the patriarchy idea of having to, like I said, control and exploit both of those terms. There's many different ecofeminists, though. Off the top of my list here is Vandana Shiva, Maria Mize, Irene Vasquez, Mary Mellor, Veronica Ben Thompson, and many more. So, period to a
Period,
bunch of women that are
yeah.
speaking up. I mean, generally, women are about 2.5 times more likely to be engaged in the climate crisis, anyways. So I think, and I've seen that personally with, there's a global youth climate group called OY4C, or Our Youth for the Climate. I was one of their social coordinators for a little bit, but I was like involved in like what they were doing for a while. But it was founded by a girl who lives in the UK, and she wants to, do climate advocacy for a career. But that's just like one example. And there's so many different, I think every time that I see a group, some sort of like higher position has a female in it.
Yeah, that's so cool that there are so many ecofeminists out there across the world. And I was doing a little bit of research on ecofeminism. I was more looking at some other movements in the past, but I
Yeah.
found something called the Green Belt Movement in Kenya in
Okay.
1977. And it's basically they still are operating, and they get groups of women out and together, and they have kind of their own community that will go and plant trees or just do something to help the environment in their community, as women all working together and coming together to do something great for the environment. So,
That's really awesome. I mean, every time that I see like a non-native advocator or activist of any sort, even for just like environmental subjects, they're usually females, and they want to start these empowering movements with other females. So I'm not surprised, but it further sends chills down my spine.
yeah, I was absolutely like floored, and even just looking at some images online, like it is just so heartwarming, and it's so powerful really to see women in their element and in a leadership position and given a platform to make a difference, not only for themselves but just for every other part of the world that needs to be spoken up for the environment. They are being that voice all across the world, and it is it just I could just sob. Like it just makes my heart swell. Like I love it so much. I love to see it.
I know the whole term with like Mother Earth, and I feel like it plays a
Yeah.
part in this like maternal feeling that females have, or anyone who identifies as female, because we want to talk about feminism and not include everybody that identifies as female, but anybody who has that like maternal instinct has some sort of deep motive to make the action to match what they're saying. Because like, I mean, there are plenty of guys who do like care about the environment. I mean, there's plenty in our like major, but I just don't see them being like, I guess, head motivated. They're or heart motivated either. I
Yeah.
think they're just like, get it done.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's doing it.
Yeah. And I always wonder, I almost want to go up to my classmates and be like, why are you in this field? Why are you in this major? What
Yeah.
what motivates you at the end of the day? What motivates you to keep coming to class and to finish this degree? Because I just think about it sometimes, and I am just a very passionate person. And when I decide I want to do something, I'm doing it with everything I have, and I'm going to love it and cry about it and get mad about it. And that just motivates me at the end of the day. That is my motivation. I'm fired up about it. I'm fired up about the environment. And some people, I just, not to like talk crap about them or anything. I'm not bashing who they are as people at all, but I just wonder what motivates other people, because if people are as passionate as me, it's like, okay, I want to see that in other people as well, and that could spark so much change if me and other people, or people like me and you, getting together and talking about these things, if there were even more people to get together as a community of people who are passionate, people who love the environment, and just any other social movement.
Right. It makes you wonder, like, how things haven't changed as quickly as they do in other fields where they are, like, more of a patriarchal, like, hierarchy. Because I think if more people were like us and really did get fired up, I mean, not that there's not, change happening.
Right.
And it's always going to be a slower movement than other areas, because there's so many different steps for these topics. But I think it does kind of make me question, like, well, is that another statistic that needs to be researched as to like women-led things versus like men-led things? I don't know.
That would be really interesting to look at. And just like women deserve a place too, to be a leader. And obviously there's a lot that goes into that in every aspect of every field ever. It's been historically impossible, or it feels impossible, to get to that higher position and to really make a change. And it sucks that it's still going on in 2024, almost 2025.
Right.
But if we could, like you said, if we could just get all these people together and just, I wish people like found it cool to care and to lead something and to start something, instead of just seeing another person do it and then following what they do because, oh, well, now it's cool. Like, I just, even starting this whole project, it's like, oh, you're starting a podcast or whatever. Is like, yeah, we are. Like, do you have a problem with that? Like, it's cool, and we're enjoying ourselves, and we're doing what we want to do, and we're spreading information, we're spreading awareness, and I don't really see any bad things about it. No. I think it's cool. Like, I don't know.
And there's so many more people like us that have started like social media platforms, which if you ever really wanted to be interested in like looking at one of those that have a big like community, some of them even have enough followers to have a broadcast channel, so they put out their own like messages every once in a while. But there's a few like specifically for feminism, like there's one called @feminist. These are all Instagram handles, by the way. @club feminism, @feminism and other things, @girls just want to have equality. There's literally like so many different things. Just putting in, feminism, you'll find people who have done what we do, and we're like, we want to do it, let's do it. And that just feels so empowering and like motivating and, I don't know, inspiring almost. To like find those pages and see other people that have started things. I'm sure there's so many other podcasts out there of people who are passionate and have a special degree or focus or expertise of some sort, and have done something. Like our do-goers or go-doers are just amazing people.
Absolutely. And just going back to kind of the history of all of this and how social movements can overlap a little bit. When I was doing my research, and like I said, I found the Greenbelt movement has started in the 70s. That's really when a lot of this started happening, at least in the United States, in the 60s and in the 70s, with the anti-war movements and hippie counterculture and feminism, environmentalism, things like that. That all sparked from groups of people being oppressed, or the government or corporations doing these things to people, and all these different groups of people are realizing, they're like, hey, we don't like that. We're going to retaliate against you, or we're going to speak out about this because this matters. So I think that's where the term ecofeminism was, not even the term, but I think that's when the idea was really truly born in the United States, at least in the larger public eye. You said it had originated in the 90s, I think, the term.
That was for intersectional environmentalism.
Oh, yeah, sorry. But just having those social movements overlap with each other, the civil rights movement, another huge one in the 60s,
Yeah.
it gets people to care. When things start getting so personal, people start caring. And I think even in recent years, having, more social movements like that happening, feminism, even more things related to civil rights and just
Right.
things like that, having everything overlapping. I think we all just need to be more caring to each other as well during that. And it's nice that we can all find community in each other, even if the problem doesn't apply. If one group of people is being discriminated against or oppressed or having, uh, they're boycotting or retaliating, and they feel this anger and this upsetness and this fuel, this fire, and so is another group, I think it's a great thing that they can come together. I hate to see it happen in the first
Yeah.
place and that it has to come to this, but having people united in that way can create something really powerful.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of different communities that are taken advantage of or oppressed. Because like not only are, females more likely, but also like people of color and
Mhm.
indigenous and any like non-white
Yeah.
American, in my opinion, which coins a term called intersectional environmentalism. And it was first like technically founded, I don't want to say founded, but like brought into society in the like early 1990s. But what's really interesting is that it wasn't really revamped until 2020, like 4 years ago. But
Mhm.
that was with George Floyd's murder, and it was revamped by a girl named Leah Thomas, and literally through an Instagram post.
Mhm.
But it's basically just like talking about environmental degradation and how it impacts like marginalized communities, which I think when I was like doing most of my research, it was really unfortunate to find that there were very recent like situations where that had happened,
Mhm.
and I thought maybe we would be like post segregation and all of that, we would be a little bit more, you know, used to seeing equality in communities, but the fact that it's still happening is a little bit saddening in a
Mhm.
way. There's a lot of like, especially people of color who are in communities that are targeted almost with, problems that like they're basically in a pit that we can either provide seeds for to like grow cool things or we're dumping waste into, and they tend to be this like trash can for waste.
Yeah.
And one of like the big things that I found, it wasn't necessarily for people of color communities, but also like with the term BIPOC,
Mhm.
like everybody in that margin were all impacted by it, was like the Flint, Michigan water
Yeah.
crisis that was literally what in like 2014 and 2016.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that long ago.
Mhm.
But there's also other examples of this that are under the margin of like environmental racism, which are like toxic waste facilities. That's what I was talking about. Like they're just disproportionately put in those communities or where those communities are. Redlining, which thought was interesting, where like they have like a map and they like highlight in red the ones that
Mhm.
are mostly oppressed, and then cost benefit analysis. Those are like three of the examples. There's literally like it, like what do you call those, like categories
Yeah.
of things that have happened,
Mhm.
that now have happened so often that if you like have see that problem again, you're like, oh, that's just that, and I'm like, that's not
It's
supposed
not
to be
just
normal.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is not normal, and that's heartbreaking to hear, that some of these things have become so normalized. It's just
Right.
like, "Oh, it's like that," and communities of people of color have been oppressed in so many ways, and the fact that it has become normal just to like, "Oh, let's build this waste facility here. Let's give them less good housing, less
Right.
opportunities." It's really heartbreaking, and I know I've talked about environmental justice a little bit on a previous episode, but that's where a lot of that comes in as well,
Mm-hmm.
because having the it's what do you do in that situation? You were just being put in this place on purpose, but at the same time, they're not going to tell you it's on purpose. It's just kind of behind the scenes at the same time. But we all know that it's happening, and
Yeah.
it's horrible.
Yep. And I know we talked about like keeping specific people accountable for their actions, and this is one of those other things, like corporations need to be held accountable for
Mhm.
the fact that they're just turning a blind eye to people who don't have the affordability that they do. They're low income housing. It's not like these people are choosing to live next to waste facilities.
Right.
Those waste facilities are being put next to them because they can't afford to move anywhere else.
Yeah, they can't afford to speak up and potentially lose any type of reputation or lose their job to have the income to afford where they live.
Right.
And then the income that they make may not even be enough to move somewhere else. And the cycle just continues. And I hope that we can, in the near future, break that cycle. And what a lot of people don't realize is history is not that far away.
Nope.
Like like you said, that term was reinvented in 2020. That was 4 years ago. Most of us listening to this are old enough to remember that and everything that happened that year and everything that came from that. And in Flint, Michigan, I remember growing up, I mean, I was maybe only 10 or 11 years old when that happened, but it was on our news. It was, even though we're all the way in Georgia, we don't have anything to do with Michigan, but it was something to be talked about and it was important, but what do you do about it? And it just became this whole thing. And I know that there was a girl who was kind of the poster child for that issue, and I follow her on social media, and to this day she's still advocating for clean water in Flint. It's been 10 years and it's crazy, but another example of a young woman that is a leader and that's a great example.
Right. I know it. And I know that there are other people. I've even seen some trans advocators, and it makes me really happy that this problem is becoming not that the problem's still here, but the problem is becoming more front and center to where other people who feel this oppression that are not biologically in the stereotype that are also feeling this specific issue, and they're like, okay, no, we need to change this because then that means more voices are heard and more people are standing up and representing the issue for the people like we were talking about just a second ago that don't have the ability to do so, or they can't move, or they can't really fight for it because they don't have the funds to do so. Which leads me into another thing, another category of unnatural being natural, which is queer ecology. And some people might not really know what the term means, but they know what both of those terms mean individually. But it really goes along with the clownfish example in the beginning. So if you're listening audibly, go watch and you'll find out what we're talking about. But that where, they can basically show us that we don't need to abide by the heteronormative categories that are in society to make things happen or make change. One thing that I feel like I want to do with not only this podcast but as an advocator in the environmental field is to deviate from this idea that queer is unnatural. Being as a queer person, sometimes it makes me feel, and I know everybody in my community, we don't belong, or maybe we need to change, or that's not part of our DNA, that we're just choosing to be this way, which makes us kind of feel like clowns in a way. We're not going off clownfish, but just generally we're being laughed at, and when in reality everything is inclusive of all identities. It's just humans.
We have become so caught up in what the standards that people have set throughout history and recent history, honestly, because in ancient history, girl, let me tell you, I'm not gonna get off on that, but it hasn't always been this way. Things have become so heteronormative, and especially in the United States, I mean, all across the world, things have become heteronormative. It was not always like this. And like you said, many animals, many creatures they don't exhibit heteronormative things. It's not they're not always quote straight. I guess animals would use the same terms, I guess. True. But the LGBTQ community deserves just as much of a platform when it comes to talking about environmental issues, social issues, as much as anybody else. And that also goes back to environmental justice because, okay, how much can I afford to focus on this versus my own issues, my own rights maybe, versus the environment? And that's another trade-off that unfortunately it even has to be a trade-off, which hopefully we can intersect those and get those social movements going at the same time. Fuel the fire even more and make some more change.
I agree. I mean, going off because you're talking about like stray animals. I think
Yeah.
that's hilarious. I wonder what they would call it.
I know, like, do they talk to each other? Like, do animals, like,
Yeah.
come out to each other?
Oh my god, wait, I'm just like picturing that. And I mean, especially like penguins, I know they have same-sex pairings. What if they like go to another, I don't know, like a seal?
Yeah.
Be like, hey, you can't kill me. I'm straight, or I'm not straight. Like, what is, I don't know, what does that mean?
What's the whole dynamic? We need to know. Any animals watching, let us know.
Yeah,
please.
no, for real. We have to do science. We have to find the citizen science. We have to make
citizen science. Help us, please. We're begging you.
I know. There was one that I thought was kind of cool. Albatrosses. They're also known for same-sex pairings, mostly with like females to females, which I thought was really interesting. I love it.
Cool.
And then seahorses, we all know, like the males that give birth. I think that's so funny.
It's so funny. And I was gonna say I don't know that many, but the only example that I really can think of is seahorses with the male giving birth and being pregnant.
I know. I mean, every time that I have a guy that like talks about like period cramps or something like that, I'm like, well, at least you're not having to give out babies like seahorses. Like, pick your battles, bro.
For real.
And then whiptail lizards was another one that was they're more like asexual, so I thought that was kind of interesting. And then bonobos, those are just a few examples I found, but there's so many.
Yeah.
And I saw this post, I can't remember what platform posted it, but it was all about like the non heteronormative ways of animals, and there is a big percentage of animals that undergo or have these things like with like asexual reproduction. There's just terms that are coined that are not like straight terms that are just all over there, especially with like cooperative parenting and everything like that. It's just everywhere.
It's everywhere.
The rainbow is everywhere.
Everywhere, and it's amazing.
And not only is it everywhere, but it's important because like for the complexity of an ecosystem, like that's what it needs to survive. We always talk about biodiversity.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've talked about biodiversity and the balance that the ecosystem has on its own, and that's part of it.
Exactly. And so that should also help you as a viewer if you identify in that community, knowing that you are that rainbow, you are that light and the societal rigid norms that is what we need to keep like standing, because a lot of the times they're the people that are the strongest and the most like ready to fight and stand up for what they believe in. And to think of like the recent situations with politics, and there's a lot of people who didn't feel like they should be alive anymore because of it, like makes me really sad, because those are the people who we need the most of.
Yeah, absolutely. We need those people who feel so strongly and who have that fire in them. I know I said it in a previous episode, but it's cool to care. It's cool to care. Please care. Please use your voice. Every single voice matters, whether you are part of the LGBTQ community, whether you're female, whether you're male, whether you are white, whether you're a person of color. Everybody matters. We need every single voice to make a change.
And that leads us to our ending, because like I said, we need to have a big community of green thread pullers to make this, like we were saying, to make this impact, make this change, and help our environment sustain life for generations to come.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us this episode. We'll see you next time. In the meantime, keep pulling on that green thread.